Daniel, can you share some pros and cons when it comes to getting investment for your businesses?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only con in my view is if you don't match the cost of the capital to what you're using it for. Other than that, obviously, every business owner and founder knows that cash is what drives the business. And in my view, fundraising to me is all encompassing of what we talked about at the beginning. Obviously, customer financing, you should always do. That means you're just selling stuff. So just do that as much as possible indefinitely, and you'll be fine. When you think about your options, I would categorize in three different options. You have debt, traditional bank debt, bank loans, term loans, revolving lines of credit. You have revenue-based financing, which is a variant of that, but the repayment mechanism is a little bit different. And then you have equity, and then equity is then subdivided into angels, private equity, venture, so on and so forth. So if we go through the list, when you think about debt, pros of debt, especially when you're going to, if you're a larger, more established business, you're probably able to get slightly lower costs of capital relative to the other options. The con is some type of security. So either on the early stage, you're personally guaranteeing it. On the later stage, you are putting up your assets. And in the event of a default or things not going to plan, they get first rights to everything before you see anything and your equity investors see anything. So that's the trade-off of just security in the downside scenario. Very few banks will do it completely unsecured if you're getting a meaningful sum of cash. With revenue-based financing, advantages there are speed. So us and some of the folks who are in this space can provide an investment between 20 minutes to 24 hours and can capitalize you very quickly. It's very flexible, and you can kind of turn it on and off as you need it. And then I would say the cons there is just really depending on what are your other options. I think in some cases we're probably the most cost effective. In other options we might not be the most cost effective. It just depends on what other options you have access to. And then really when you think about equity, again, pros there is it's very good. It's like really the only source of capital for very risky investments. So a bank and even for us, we won't invest into businesses that aren't generating revenue. So we're just not an option if you're below 6 months or you haven't sold a dime of anything. Equity is perfect for that. So the pro of equity is they will invest in the things that do not exist and help you create it. The con of it is the cost of capital for equity is incredibly high. So let us go back to that example. If you look at a traditional venture investor, typically a fund, like a really good fund, is probably returning, call it 3x on whatever they've raised from their LPs. So that's your cost of capital. That basically says if I took $1 million and I did my job and I made my investor happy, I'm giving them $3 million, $4 million bucks. So my cost of capital is 300%. And no one really thinks about it that way. And that's really the cost of equity, is that's money that's not going into your pocket. And again, there's nothing wrong with it if you deploy that on things that could generate a greater than 3x return. Did you hire an executive? Did you expand into a new market? Are you putting this 3x cost of capital into things that can generate 4, 5, 6, 10x return for you as the founder? That's how I think about that. So I'd say I would look at fundraising. I would look at each fundraising option and the pros and cons of that in isolation to what is it exactly you are using this capital for? What did it cost you? And what's the return you think you can get out of it?
Yeah, perfect. And then just to kind of probe a little deeper, I see in context to e-commerce, is that something for Clearco that is a key area when it comes to helping e-commerce sellers funding their businesses?
Could you share a bit more about what you think would be helpful to talk about?
So essentially, when it comes to e-commerce businesses, is that something, because I see on Clearco's side, that's a key strategic move to be in the e-commerce space. What attracted you or Clearco to invest in the e-commerce space?
Yeah, I mean, we think e-commerce is the future of entrepreneurship, really. If you're starting a business today, it's literally probably one of the easiest, starting a business is not easy. So let me caveat that. But in the scheme of all the different types of businesses you could start, we think most entrepreneurs tomorrow will start in e-commerce because, we wouldn't fund necessarily drop shipping businesses, but if you're in school and, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, you can start a Shopify store or drop ship on Amazon pretty easily. And we're super excited about that because we think that's where the futures of creators will be. And, we think and when you look at that asset class, a lot of these businesses have very good return profiles and very predictable return profiles. If I have an asset that say I put in this amount of money, they're going to invest into the ads, they're going to get this return on ad spend and grow at this rate. and that's so predictable, like that's actually a quite safe investment in the scheme of things I could put my money into. And then there's a huge gap because it's such a great investment opportunity. And there's not a lot of funding options for these types of businesses. We thought like, oh, this is crazy. How is there no one in this space? And so that's why we pioneered this and built out, kind of one of the first products for revenue-based financing for this types of businesses. And, now we're happy to see founders have a ton of different options. But really outside of that, we help our entrepreneurs navigate all different parts of this, whether they're looking to exit. Can we help introduce them to folks like Jim and his team or other acquirers that are looking to buy their businesses? Are you looking to raise equity? We have a whole network of venture investors that look at a lot of our portfolio companies, and there are some who are great venture-backed companies, and we're happy for them to graduate to that. We have partnerships with various boutique lenders or more established lenders like Silicon Valley Bank, as an example, where we're happy to graduate our companies to those financial products when it makes sense, where cost of capital might be a little bit lower. You're getting longer term capital, larger amounts. At the end of the day, we really care about optimizing what's going to be most helpful to the founder. And the part we're just most confident in is we are probably the most helpful for a business that is looking to scale, that needs capital for marketing and inventory. Use us very specifically for that. And then everything else, we have a whole bunch of options, and we're happy to help you discover all of them.
Great. Just a follow-up question on that. So let's say once you've got your investment, what level of involvement does Clearco keep within the business?
I mean, it's really up to the founder how much help they want. We assign you someone directly on our team who's your one-to-one contact. Some of our founders are just purely here for capital, but we have a lot of services where, short on how we actually make our investment decisions. It starts by connecting your Shopify store or Amazon account, and we use that to underwrite all of our investments. And because of that, we have all this data to then help make additional recommendations to you. So for example, if we notice that your customer acquisition costs are below average, we have partners that we can introduce you to who can help you improve that. Or we have other technology apps or things where you might get discounts or special deals where you're kind of accessing it through our portfolio. We've tried to systematize and automate and scale all the things you would look for in a traditional investor. But we've built it in such a way that we can do it for now 5,500 companies, probably be at 6,000 by the end of the year or something like that. That's how we help outside of capital. It's can we help you raise money? Can we help you find partners? Can we help you sell through our network or some of the other kind of automations we've done through our AI matching algorithms? Great.
There's a lot going on, and essentially, I think what's great is it's not just the money aspect in terms of fundraising, all the different benefits attached to helping founders really utilize it well and grow the business. Moving on to the next thing that we wanted to discuss whilst you're here, Daniel, is success stories or pitfalls to avoid when it comes to fundraising. Some success stories that you come across and some kind of pitfalls that you've seen that the guys on who have joined us today can look to learn from.
I mean, I'll start with pitfalls. I think that's like a bit more general. Is really if you try to fundraise at a point where you've not timed it properly. So you're trying to basically don't try to raise money when you desperately need money, because then you're not gonna have a lot of options. And fundraise. So taking Clearco aside, our funding model is pretty straightforward. You in 10,000 a month in turnover. You have 6 months of history. I can't promise what the specific offer or investment will be, but there will always be capital available for businesses that are, in a decent shape and are growing and showing growth. And so it's a pretty wide range of e-commerce and businesses we'll invest into. When you think about banks or equity, a lot of those are very relationship driven. And so as much as you have this job of running your business, you have another job of maintaining those relationships. And you can really think about this as it's like an enterprise sale. What you're doing is you're selling someone in an equity scenario a piece of your company. And so that's a long sales process. And you need to maintain those relationships, make sure they like you, make sure you like them. And it might take a year or 2 or 5 or 10 before you ever actually do a deal with someone. And so you need to start building those relationships today if you feel like that's a path you want to pursue. And so a pitfall is really like not thinking through that, not realizing that's something you have to start sooner rather than later for kind of equity style things. But going back to, if you're a business that has 3 months of cash in the bank and are going to go over a cliff, you're not going to raise a lot of money. It's just like I put it back to you, like, would you invest money if you saw a business that wasn't yours with that situation? Probably not. Or if it did, you would charge an insane cost of capital because it's so risky. So try to get well ahead of that. And that's what Alexi was talking about before. That's where having your financials in order, and whether that is, I don't mean audited financials. It's just like, can you at least have a spreadsheet that just shows you your money in, money out, and how much runway you have, and some rough sense of unit economics. And until you are profitable, the only thing that matters is your runway. So how many months of life do you have left in your company before it falls off a cliff? And how do you continue to extend the runway, or ideally become profitable where you have infinite life, and then you don't need anyone's money and you can just operate on your own. And so, the converse of that is success stories. Like, I can talk specifically of when we raised our round with my last company. We were a profitable business generating cash. We had a few million in the bank, and that made it a lot easier to raise money, because it's like, oh, you could give us a few $1 million, but I already have a few $1 million in the bank. So it's like, it has to be a compelling opportunity for us to want to work with you to do that. So the success stories always come from negotiating from a position of strength, whether that's cash in the bank, insane growth and momentum. Those are the types of things I would look for.
Brilliant. Thanks for sharing that, Daniel. And then Jim, similar question in terms of success stories and pitfalls to avoid in the context of selling your business.
In the context of selling?
Yeah.
I think that what I see quite often is a big focus on the top line number, and there's a bit of an obsession with how much have I sold at the expense sometimes of margin. So in software businesses, valuations are slightly different, and you get multiples of revenue in bigger organizations. But the market, I think, with our audience today, most people are going to get their business valued on their trailing 12 months EBITDA or STE. And so if you've got a business that's doing 20 million at 10% EBITDA, the value is the same as a business doing half the amount of revenue and double the profit. And what I often see is everyone is obsessed with that top line number. They want to show 10 million in revenue. But, if you can't show, and this links into finance as well. If you look at an aggregator, aggregators are borrowing money like anyone else. That's, the cash is borrowed, you deploy it, you get a return on that capital, and hopefully it's much better than the cost of the capital, right? So everyone's playing the same game. So, if you're looking to buy a business that's delivering 8% EBITDA and your cost of capital is 8%, that's not a particularly attractive proposition to an aggregator or anyone buying who's had to borrow money to make that acquisition. So, short answer is, really look at supply chain costs. It's all about driving all the levers you can drive around advertising, supply chain, cost of goods, shipping, which is obviously difficult for everyone at the moment, and just try and keep that margin as near as you can to 20% when all is done.
Yeah, great. And then finally, Alexei, I guess more so on our Osome side, the pitfalls that accountants or accounting software can help avoid. What would be your perspective on this topic?
Just echoing Jim again, like that's 100% one of the biggest pitfalls that we see on our side is merchants not thinking about the financial health of the business, right? Like you are driving revenue and like you don't track really in a proper way cost of goods sold. You don't know like how, like what is your margin. It looks like that you have money in the bank account, and that would mean for you that yep, I'm probably doing all right. Right, but then like what you got to do actually is dig deeper in terms of like what is your unit economics, like what are your margin for each of the product, each of the channels that you are using, and then like from there understand where you are, how healthy is your business, and then like this will also like help you out with then potential buyers to assess the value of your business much quicker, and their assessment will be much more in line with your expectations.
Yeah, just to add to that, something that's really common as well is, and I was guilty of this myself. When you have your brand and you're launching new products, a lot of the time, it's 80-20, 80% of the revenue comes across 20% of your products or services. But as the creator of those products, you will loathe after the sweat and blood you put in to let something go, even if it doesn't quite make sense. And so, if you're thinking about selling, you'll be much more attractive if you've got a highly optimized business, and just think about really brutally cutting off that's sort of 80% that's only delivering 20% of the sales, because that frees up time, money, team. You know, it can make a big difference, and it makes the business much more valuable to buy as well. Because when you buy a business that's really performing well with less complication, it's a lot easier to migrate and take over and accelerate. So, you know, those are the things that people are looking at when they're trying to work out whether your business is a nice target for them. And in turn, you know, there's questions around multiples. You know, the holy grail for everyone is getting the best exit value. And if multiple is the driver of that, multiples are driven by category, margin. Is it another kind of marketplace product like an Amazon product or an eBay product, or has it got potential to become a category leading direct consumer brand globally? And if you've come up with something that's got an audience, you know, talking about Daniel, you know, an audience, a following, a differentiation, if it ticks all of those boxes, you'll get multiples way beyond what you're probably used to hearing when you talk about how much can I sell my business for. So, you know, focus on margin, focus on differentiation, focus on a brand story, focus on an audience, all the stuff we talked about today. And that's how you're going to get a business that's really attractive and give you a great exit number.